Welcome back to 16 weeks of SATs with myself, Andrew. And if you're on this video looking at adverbials, which is what we're going to be covering today, probably not too far away from SATs in terms of your journey, maybe six to 8 weeks away, coming up after Easter. And you've probably worked really, really hard so far on all of your grammatical aspects and everything else to do with SATs. So I just wanted to say well done for continuing to work hard. And if you're watching this video, you're definitely continuing to work hard in terms of preparing for your SATs. So well done. Now, in this video, we're going to be looking at adverbials. And adverbials, in a really simple sense, are groups of words that give us a bit more information about when, where, why, and how something happens. And that's all we can really keep in mind when it comes to an adverbial. We're going to find them within sentences, and the most common one to spot is obviously the fronted adverbial. So it's an adverbial phrase, a group of words that happens at the beginning of a sentence. So you'll have used fronted adverbials lots and lots within your writing and marked them with a comma. So having the fronted adverbial information in your head is going to help you get a lot of marks, because quite often the adverbial questions don't say fronted adverbial, but it's positioned at the front of the sentence, and you can see that with the comma within the sentence. So adverbial marks, there's a lot to pick up just from that fronted adverbial knowledge. But we'll take a look at other types of adverbials and where we might find them. But the key bit of information is really thinking about how these adverbials offer a bit more information about how, where, when, and why things are happening within a sentence. So without further ado, let's look at some of these examples and see how we can pick up those easy adverbial marks.
So let's take a look at adverbials. So as we can read here, an adverbial is a word or a group of words that adds more information to a sentence. So again, the key part really with adverbials is thinking when, where, how, and why something happens, okay? And a little bit around the time and the place. So there's lots and lots of examples here. We won't spend loads of time on them. But the key thing really with adverbials is these four things of when, where, how, and why something is going to happen. So with this example, underline the adverbial in the sentence below. And it's important to remember that when we're talking about adverbials, they can be fronted adverbials. So again, when we think about when, okay, when was on Wednesday, okay? So the question is asking us to underline this. So we would do that very, very simply. And that would get us the mark. So again, a relatively simple question. And as we've said, with these adverbial questions, it's making sure that we don't forget that if it asks for an adverbial, that very often is going to be a fronted adverbial. Once again, this question is laid out exactly the same. Underline the adverbial in the sentence below. And again, we have last week, Ruby went swimming and played football. But again, the adverbial is when that happened, and it was last week. So again, very straightforward. We can use our ruler and we can underline this concept of last week. Very, very simple. That would give us the mark and we could move on. With this example of question, we've got insert a comma after the fronted adverbial. So it's telling us that we already have fronted adverbials in here, and all we have to do is insert a comma after each of the fronted adverbials. So we've got sentence 1, and then we've got sentence 2. So very simply, if we just read through the first question, luckily for us, the ball rolled slowly past the goal. And hopefully we could have heard it was just quite simply luckily for us. Because again, without this, the rest of this sentence makes sense on its own, doesn't it? The ball rolled slowly past the goal. That could be a complete sentence. So this extra information is the adverbial. And in this instance, the fronted adverbial, so we would just mark it with a comma there. In the second sentence, after 3 hours of hard work, the builders managed to dig out the tree. And again, it's a bit of a longer one, but hopefully you could hear and see after 3. Some children would want to put it here because they'd think, oh, after 3 hours, great. But this phrase is actually continued. After 3 hours of hard work. Well done. And again, you can see here from the builders managed to dig out the tree, that could function as a sentence as its own. So again, we can just, after 3 hours of hard work, comma, and it's that simple to get the mark and move on. So another slightly different question style, where in these ones we have to tick one of the 4 boxes. Which sentence starts with an adverbial? And again, tricky to know, but again, if it's going to start with an adverbial, then it's a front adverbial, so we know that it's going to have a comma. So straight away, we can sort of discount these two really, because they don't have that. And then again, we've got she's feeling tired, so Cal is going to her room. After dinner, Cal is going to her room. Now, hopefully we can spot that it's going to be this one, because we've got the little bit of when after dinner. But also, even though this has a comma, what we must spot is the coordinating conjunction. Okay, so this is actually a compound sentence joined by a conjunction. So this isn't an adverbial, it's actually a main clause. She is feeling tired. Cal is going to her room. She is feeling tired, so Cal is going to her room. So it's a completely different sentence structure. And again, if we can spot the fact that we have a coordinating conjunction in there, like and, but, so, etc., then that tells us what this is as well. So it should be fairly straightforward that we've got this one. So we would tick that box, take the mark, and we would move on. So again, another one where we've got to use a little bit of our knowledge. So which sentence uses a comma after a front adverbial? Now, in all these examples, we have commas. So it's really working through them and trying to discount them. Okay, so I'm going to start at the bottom. Oh, let's just read them out. We studied the menu at the noisy, crowded ice cream parlor. Now, hopefully you can sort of hear the fact that here we've basically got 2 adjectives describing the ice cream parlor. So this comma is being used to separate those adjectives. Okay, so we can discount that as a fronted adverb, or that's how that's being used. It's used to separate the describing words. With this example, I chose chocolate, Mum chose strawberry, and Dad chose vanilla. So again, essentially we have a list. We have 3 things. We have you, Mum, and Dad, separated by a comma. So I chose chocolate, Mum chose strawberry, and Dad chose vanilla. So it's definitely not that one. My ice cream was covered in nuts, comma, chocolate, chips, and toffee sauce. So these 2 sentence structures are essentially the same. They are lists. And then finally, we have when our waitress came over, I asked which flavors were the most popular. So even if we weren't 100% sure, this is the only one, or the only option really that makes sense. Okay, and it's talking about when, isn't it? The clue is when something happened was when the waitress came over. Very simple. And interestingly, I think in the other tick box question, it was this second option as well. Not necessarily always true, but interesting. Let's take another question. Which option makes the sentence start with an adverbial? So we've got all these options below to think about which one's going to fit in here. It was noisy and crowded, comma, but we lined up for the class photo. So again, my natural instinct here is that we have a coordinating conjunction. So that's going to tell me that that's going to make more of a compound sentence. The photographer arrived while we lined up for the class photo. With big smiles on our faces, comma, we lined up for the class photo, and the whole class were ready, so, and again, we've got this, so. And again, what I would say with this one, essentially, the photographer arrived while we lined up for our class photo. I would expect that we've got subordinating conjunction, then we've got, coordinating conjunction, then potentially a subordinating conjunction helping to form a complex sentence. And again, with this one, with big smiles on our faces, comma, we lined up for the class photo. Again, this is how we lined up, so we can naturally assume it's this one. But we've worked through that logically. And again, with this final example, we'll just rub that out. With this final example, going back to what we said right at the start. So underline the adverbial in the sentence below. We need to think about an adverbial telling us more information about how, when, why, where. Okay, so really obviously we should be able to see we put on our P kits before the match. So again, relatively simple. It's showing us when that happened. So we would just underline this section very simply, and that would give us the mark. So again, with all these examples in adverbials, with a little bit of common sense, we can pretty much pick the right option out every time and get those marks. And the likelihood is we will get a question on adverbials or fronted adverbials. And as ever, be sure just to pause this screen and have a go at these questions with your teacher, your friends, your parents, or if you're working on these on your own, have a go. They're set out in different ways so that you can practice those adverbial questions.
Brilliant stuff. Well done with adverbials. So if you've got this far, I would like to think that you're pretty confident having looked at those examples. And again, with the adverbials, they're pretty similar question types. Okay. Yes, we've got tick boxes and underlines. But ultimately, a lot of those marks or the hidden bit of knowledge that we need to remember is just a lot of the answers are just fronted adverbials that are hidden in there. And the other little bit of grammatical knowledge that helps us spot a fronted adverbial is the comma that marks it as well. So we can always be looking out for that when it comes to an adverbial question. Okay. So try not to worry too much about that. When we just think about adverbials on their own, again, just remembering that an adverbial are a group of words that are telling us a little bit more about how, where, why, and when something is happening. And beyond that, you'll pick up most of the marks, especially with the fronted adverbial bits being dropped in there. So again, you can go away from this video and this content feeling fairly confident about adverbials and thinking, I can definitely pick up those marks if those questions arise in the SATs paper. So well done for continuing to get stuck into your SATs preparation. Keep working hard. Keep checking out the other videos around the grammar and arithmetic from myself on the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to it. Leave us a few comments if you can. And we will definitely see you in the next video of 16 weeks of SATs.